The broadcast ministry of Christ Way Fellowship brings you victory for today. Exalting the Savior, evangelizing the seeker, and equipping the saint. Committed to the principle that you can have victory today and every day through Jesus Christ. Jesus said, "I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly." And now, here's your host, Pastor Wayne Duncan.
Well, hello and welcome to Victory for Today. Thank you for tuning in. It's good to be with you again on this broadcast. Well, last week we talked about walking in the light, and I hope that you practiced those principles we talked about in order to walk in the light this week. If you missed last week or if you need a review, you can go on our website, victoryfortoday.com. And there you can either look at the video from last week from this program, or you could even listen to, I think there's an old sermon on there that you might want to listen to that goes back into the 1990s, I think in 1994, something like that. And you can listen to that. Now, you can also, on that archive selection that there is there on our website, you can download those a DVD if you want to. Download the program and make you a DVD, or you can download a MP3 and use it any way you want to. You can put it on your phone even if you'd like to carry it along with you. So it's absolutely free. Just hope that you can get some use out of it. But today I want to go on to another subject. Now, I know this one's going to touch every one of us. And that is this topic, when trouble comes. And when trouble comes to stay. Sometimes trouble comes to stay, doesn't it? It seems like it's not going anywhere. I don't know if you remember the comedian George Carlin. He had some funny things he had to say, and I copied this. He said, here's all you need to know about men and women. Women are crazy, men are stupid. And the main reason women are crazy, the main reason women are crazy is that men are stupid. I about lost that one. Well, that's one kind of trouble between the sexes. But all kinds of things come our way in this life. Financial trouble. Lots of folks having financial trouble these days. Family trouble. Physical trouble. Lots of things that go on that you just feel like, well, why did I have this happen to me? But you know, it's kind of like saying, why did trouble come my way? It's kind of like expecting or having the expectation that a bull won't charge you just because you're a vegetarian. You know, trouble. It's open season for trouble all the time. So we just have to learn to live with that kind of life nowadays. Jesus said, in this world you'll have tribulation. That's pressure, that's stress, as we might call it today. I saw a little cartoon on the Facebook the other day. You ever see this anti-acid on there? Some of these are pretty funny. She said she's holding a bottle of hair dye, and she says, some people call them gray hairs. I call them stress highlights. Well, we all know about stress and about trouble and problems. And the Apostle Paul was someone who was acquainted with that. He had a lot of things that went on in his life. He goes on and talks about some of the things that he went through. Shipwrecked, out on the open seas, beaten 5 times with 39 lashes and so forth. All kinds of times he was hungry and cold and thirsty, but he carried on. But I want us to go today to 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 2, where he talks about a very specific and special thing that I think will help us. Now, if you don't have a Bible, I'd be happy to send you one absolutely free. It's from our ministry. It includes some study guides and a couple of tracts, and also a DVD entitled Who is Jesus? So if you'll contact us, we'll send that to you absolutely free. You got the New King James Version or the traditional King James, even Spanish version. So if you need a Bible, let me know. if you do have one of these Bibles, it's page 1032 today. Okay, here's what the Apostle Paul says. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, God knows, such a one was caught up to the third heaven. Now, most scholars here believe, Bible students believe, that this is the Apostle Paul speaking about himself, but he uses the third person for humility's sake. Verse 3, and I know such a man, whether in the body or out of the body I do not know, God knows, how he was caught up into paradise. Paradise. Now that's a Greek word for a beautiful, lovely garden. Up into paradise, up into heaven. Jesus said to the man on the cross, he said, today you'll be with me in paradise. And heard inexpressible words which it is not lawful for a man to utter. Of such a one I will boast, yet of myself I will not boast, except in my infirmities. For though I might desire to boast, I will not be a fool, for I will speak the truth, but I refrain lest anyone should think of me above what he sees me to be or hears from me, and lest I should be exalted above measure. One of the translations says conceited here. That's the English Standard Version. Above measure by the abundance of the revelations. A thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted or conceited above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I would rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take no pleasure in infirmities. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecutions, and distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. Well, the Apostle Paul certainly knew about stress. He certainly knew about difficulties. I heard a story one time about a violin maker who was a master craftsman. But he always just seemed in his own eyes to fall short of having that perfect violin that made the perfect tone. He even went so far as to grow his own wood and try to come up with just the right combination of the materials and the master craftsmanship. Well, he never could make it. Finally, a friend of his sent him a piece of wood, and he took that piece of wood and he made from it a violin. He put it up to his chin and he began to play, and he had at last achieved the perfection that he had been after. And he wrote to his friend, he said, where did this wood come from? It must have come from a lush tropical garden. And the man wrote back and said, no, it came from the most severe climate along the timberline in the mountains. That's the roughest place it is for anything to grow. And it was through all that wood had been through that it had become so sweet and so mellow. Someone has said that a diamond, a diamond is just a lump of coal that made good under pressure. That's what a diamond is. And so when we go through difficulties and struggles and all these trials in life, that's part of what comes out of that, is that it makes something in us. It makes something out of us. Well, the Apostle Paul is writing here to the church at Corinth. These were people that he was well familiar with. These were a place he'd visited several times. He had some personal friends there. And he just kind of spilling himself out before these people, talking about the things that he's been through and how he has suffered, and now he has this thing and has had it for a long time that he's been suffering with. Dear friends, I believe God is a good God, and he wants good things for his children, but that doesn't mean that we don't go through struggles and trials. As a matter of fact, if you just look back at some of the most notable Christians of the past, you'll see that they went through difficult times. Take John Wesley, who's the founder of the Methodist denomination, as we would say today. Went through a lot of problems and trials, was condemned and treated roughly. And he went through all of that in establishing what he believed to be the truth of the gospel. There was William Carey, who was the person that we give credit for being the father of the modern missionary movement. And it was William Carey. He was a shoe cobbler. That's how he made his living. But while he was working at making and mending shoes, he was studying Greek and Hebrew and preparing himself because he wanted to go to the mission field. And he was severely discouraged. There was a man in a meeting that Carey was in one time, and he said to Carey, "Young man, God will save the heathen when he's good and ready, and without your help, sit down." How's that for an encouraging word? And then there was the first missionary from America, Adoniram Judson, who was a Congregationalist and was going over to work with William Carey. And yet, when he got there was no place for him, and he ended up in Burma. And because he was Caucasian, Burma was at war with the UK at that time. He was arrested. You've heard that term, being strung up by your thumbs. Yes, he endured that and a lot of other things by being imprisoned in Burma, but all the time he was there, he was working on the translation of the Bible into the Burmese language. There's Charles Haddon Spurgeon, one of the greatest preachers that ever lived back in the 1800s, and he suffered from depression so severely. And one night he and his wife were sitting there by the fire, and the fire was burning, and he was in a deep state of depression. And one of the little pieces of wood, you know how wood will make a sound sometimes when it's burning, and it made just a sweet little sound. And he said, maybe that's what all the suffering is about, is in order that we might make a sweet sound unto our Lord and God. You remember Smith Wigglesworth. He suffered physically, and yet he went out and ministered healing to people night after night in meetings. Catherine Kuhlman, somebody I'm sure you probably remember. She was someone who suffered with depression. She would be in her dressing room just nearly out of it with depression, then come on the platform and the Spirit of God come on her, and she would minister to thousands of people, go back in depression. See, this is no... this thing of going through struggles and difficult times, it's not just happening to you and me, friend. It's happened to lots of people. And the Apostle Paul was one of them. Just think of all that Martin Luther King went through in order to accomplish his purposes. I mean, look, there will be struggles. Jesus said, in this life you'll have tribulation. In this world you're going to have it. And, if they treated the master that way, what are they going to do to the servants? So, just because your Christian life is not all downhill and shady or in sunshine and flowers, that doesn't mean that you're off track. It doesn't mean that God isn't in control and has his hand right on you right now. So let's understand that trouble is a part of life. You look back at the Apostle Paul, you remember the first thing happened to him. He got saved and went into Damascus, and they created such a stir they had to let him down the city wall in a basket and escape from the people that wanted to get their hands on him. All the stuff that he went through, my goodness, friend. But you know what? All the time that the Apostle Paul went through all that, he knew that Christ was with him. And I hope that you know that today. Jesus is with you. He hasn't left you. He hasn't forsaken you. He never will. Never will. Now let's think about Paul and his thorn in the flesh. He says here that he was given this thorn in the flesh. It was given to him. It was a messenger of Satan. He had it for years and years, possibly up to 14 years. So let's think about these three things. And I've got three jotted down here that I want us to look at. First of all, this thing was severe. It was severe. It wasn't just a hangnail. It wasn't a paper cut he's talking about here. It was a severe thing. Nobody knows what it was. I was studying this years ago, and I went over to the health club here, and there was a Catholic priest that's a friend of mine there, and I went over and said, "Hey, Bob, I've been studying on this thing, and what do you think Paul's thorn in the flesh was?" He said, "I don't have a clue." So, we don't really know what it was, but we know that it was something that really was troubling. Some think, well, maybe it was his eyesight, because you find sometimes in his letters he said, "Look what large letters," when he'd sign his letters. But we don't really know what it was. But we know this. First of all, it was severe. As a matter of fact, the word that's used here for thorn is a wooden stake. It's like a wooden stake being driven into your flesh. So this thorn in the flesh was severe. It was steadfast. It wasn't going anywhere. He'd had trouble with this thing for years and years and years and years. Maybe up to 14 years he'd had this problem. And it says here also it was satanic. Now, it says in the scriptures that it was a messenger of Satan. Now, friend, listen, let's don't ever get the idea, please don't ever get the idea that the struggle between good and evil, God and Satan, is an even battle. It is not. God is the creator, and Satan is the creature. And so, just because we see this struggle going on, and sometimes it almost seems as if Satan has an upper hand. Look, God is the creator. God will have his way. And sometimes God even uses Satan to accomplish his purposes, as odd as that may sound. But here it is. He says, a messenger of Satan, but God was accomplishing purposes through that. Now, what do we normally do when we have a big trouble? Well, first thing we usually try to do is we try to escape it. We try to get away from that trouble. And there's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, it says right here that the Apostle Paul, when he got into this thing, he asked God to take it away. Asked him 3 times. I think it was in earnest, asking God to take it away. There's no problem with that. Ask God to take it away. And if it's his will, he will take it away. But in this particular case, it was not his will. You can't run from all your problems. I remember us going through, maybe you remember way back, we went through the book of Ruth. And they tried to escape their problems. Her husband Elimelech and Ruth left the place that they were supposed to be, where Israel was supposed to live, and they went away, went into Moab during a famine, took their 2 boys with them, Mahlon and Chilion, and they went to Moab to get away from the famine, and they were going to sojourn there. They were going to be there. Well, they were there because Elimelech, the husband, and both the boys died in that land. So here's what I'm trying to say is, running from your problems isn't a good idea. So, and one thing, sometimes our problem is us. Wherever you go, there you are. But running from problems, trying to escape them, that's not always the best thing to do when we have problems. Ask God about it. Talk to God about it, and then see what he does with it. So we try to escape our problems. Another thing that we try to do is try to understand them. We try to explain our problems. We try to come to an understanding about it. And in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7 especially, it speaks there about choosing life or choosing death. And this had developed to the point that at the time of Christ and the time of the New Testament had just about become a way of seeing things, that if you had troubles, it meant that you were wrong with God. And if you were having it easy, you were right with God. And that's why at one point the people said to Jesus, well, how can someone be saved if a rich man can't be saved? Because they equated his richness with being blessed by God. Well, friend, listen, even understanding our problems, trying to understand it, sometimes it's difficult to do that. You won't believe this, but when I was a little boy, little red-headed fellow there in Dallas, I got in a lot of trouble with at home. I got a whooping just about every day. I said a whooping. And I think my parents had the idea, whoop him every day. If you don't know why, he does. But one thing I can tell you, really, and all the whoopings I got, I always knew what it was for. And I'm sure you do your children the same way. You let them know this is why you're being punished. Well, I've had people over the years as a pastor just say to me in a hospital room or in difficult times, I don't know why God is doing this to me. Well, folks, listen, it's not God taking retribution against you. It's not. And if God is trying to correct someone, I think there's a long road that goes before it ever gets down to the correction phase, because God is saying to us, and He's pointing out to us to mend our ways, mend your ways, mend your ways, and then He'll take whatever corrective action that He has to. I don't think that it's something where we need to try to, when we're in a struggle, to try to think, is God doing this to me? God would have spoken to you early on about what He was about to correct you about. No, I don't think that's the case generally, but trying to understand it, trying to understand our problems. Some are in the natural that we can do something about, some are not. Well then, as we get along this way, another thing we try to do is endure our problems. Just be tough. Tough it out. I saw a little cartoon, I've got it copied down here, and it's a little preschool boy dressed up like a cowboy, and he's got his hat on, and there's a pony behind him. And he says this, you can either go cry in the truck, or you can cowboy up. And sometimes we get the idea that when we get into a struggle or a problem, difficulty, troubles, the thing for us to do is just to bow up and take it like a man, you know. And that's admirable. And there are things in life we need to just be tough. Go ahead and go on through it. But if we depend solely on self, we could easily end up bankrupt. You know, it was Peter that the night Jesus was betrayed that made the bold statements about how he was going to stand with Christ. I'll be there with you. All others can deny you, but I'll be there. And then when it all went down, Peter denied the Lord 3 times. He'd gotten to the end of himself. You see, he never was able to trust himself again, was he? No, he always knew from that point on that what Paul had learned, what I'm trying to learn, and what I hope you're learning too, is that God is going to supply what we need to get through our troubles. We make some mighty bold statements sometimes about what we're going to do and how we're going to conduct ourselves, but we need to realize without God, we just can't get the job done. So enlist that problem. Enlist it in a way to receive suffering as a gift and realize that God's going to use that in order to help us to rely on His grace. To come to the place we rely on His grace and we can reflect on His glory. That's where the Apostle Paul got to and what he was struggling with here. God said He wasn't going to remove that His grace was sufficient for him. And so instead of getting in the mully grubs about it, he said, okay, I'm going to rejoice in it. I'm going to go through this thing in a way that I'm going to get the full benefit of the grace of God, and I'm going to reflect God's glory all the way through it. And that's through the power of God, not through our human endeavor, our human endurance, as we spoke about just a moment ago. So keep those things in mind. I hope you will. And we're going to face troubles. All God's children got troubles. It's kind of like noses. Everybody's got one. So we've all got problems, and we're going to need to deal with them. In this life, you'll have tribulation. Let's face those things in a way that's going to bring glory to God, and we're going to receive the maximum amount of grace from Him. Can't escape it, can't explain it, can't endure it. Receive it from God. Look, as we're going off the air, I want to remind you that if you'll help us stay on the air by contributing $20 for airtime and production, I didn't say salaries. I don't get paid for doing this. This is just strictly a labor of love. For airtime and production, if you will contribute $20 to us being able to do that, I would love to send this to you. This is from our ministry. It's Streams of Gold. It's a book of daily devotionals. It's by my prayer partner. We get together. We've been doing this for 10 or 11 years. We're trying to figure out the other day just how long we've been doing it. But It's been a long time, 10 or 11 years. We get together every week and pray. And it's Gerald Brinkley. He's the pastor of Father's House Worship Center in this area. It's 366, so it's ready even for leap year. Just send me $20 and I'll gift you with that. If you would like to get more serious about your giving to keep us on the air, if you would commit to $20 per month, I will send you a leather-bound Bible. It's the most popular, I guess I could say, study Bible. It's the Life Application Bible with, a translation of the Word of God above it. We've been doing the New International Version, trying to stay with the 1984 edition of that, but I have it in other translations too. But if you'd commit to $20 a month and go ahead and begin your giving, then I'll send that Bible to you. This program is brought to you. Of course, our church is the one that originated the program in the mid-'80s. And, you can just go so far with something when your expenses are so high. We've had to drop some stations recently. And may I just say that if we ever drop your station, please go to the website, victoryfortoday.com, and look at archives. We're going to continue to have programs on there that you can tune into on your computer. You can even download it. You can make you a DVD of the program if you want to, or you can make you a CD of the program. They're just absolutely free. You can download that and have those with you. There's over 300 talks and sermons, and even some of them contain sermon notes and outlines and so forth. So just trying to put something out there that's going to be really helpful to people. And we have a number of folks that tune into that and get our helps there. And you'd be welcome to do that. But I hope we don't have to go off your station. And you can help us stay on your station by contributing to the cost involved. This has been a wonderful time of ministry for me personally, to be able to share the Word of God in this broad fashion. Now we're going literally around the world through the internet. And then having been on radio for several years now and the television, it's just a great way to get the Word of God out. And our church is delighted to be able to give away Bibles and to do these kind of things, but we need some help. And that's why I'm sort of camping on this right now, because we do need your help in staying on the air. So please think about that. Pray about it. If God tells you to help, you help, okay? Well, it's been great being with you today. I hope you'll tune back in next week. And this is Wayne Duncan saying, the good Lord willing, and the saints don't rise. I'll see you right here next week on Victory for Today.